All right, guys, we were lucky enough to get to see an early screening of this movie 2 weeks before general release, so we're excited to get our spoiler-free thoughts out to you today for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
So directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of the legendary Ivan Reitman, who obviously did the original classics. The synopsis for the film is, when a single mum and her 2 kids arrive in a small town, they begin to discover their connection to the original Ghostbusters and the secret legacy their grandfather left behind. So, what were your initial thoughts going in and coming out of the film then, Chris?
All right, well, going in, I'm always excited for a Ghostbusters movie. And I did watch a trailer for it, but I can't really remember what happened in the trailer. So I was pretty fresh going in. But then coming out, I really loved it. And it really feels like a spiritual successor to the original movies. It does lean heavily into sort of nostalgia, references and Easter eggs in there and stuff. So I feel like that's probably what you want. If you're a big fan of the originals, that's probably what you're after. So yes, but there's enough new stuff in there for new people as well, I think. So that's what I thought. What about you?
Yeah, completely agree with you. I had a lot of fun with this film. I thought it was really charming. As you said, it is very nostalgia fueled. So if you're sick of reboots and remakes and things, probably not one for you.
Probably.
But if you're a big fan of the originals, I think it would be a really nice and special moment for you to take your kids along with you, introduce them to like a new generation of Ghostbusters. And I think, yeah, that would just be quite special, really.
Indeed. So let's talk about characters and performances then, shall we?
Yeah,
It's a kid-led movie.
Definitely.
So
yes.
It kind of has those strong 80s vibes, like, you know, those old movies, like you got Goonies and Gremlins and E.T. and all those kind of things. So it has that kind of vibe to it, which is really cool. But it still works for all age groups. Like it doesn't feel like it's a kid's movie, does it? Really, no. It has enough for everyone in there, which is cool. There's a couple of cameos in there. We won't mention too much about that because we don't want to spoil anything.
If you don't want to spoil anything, don't go on IMDb.
Yeah,
because everyone is listed on there, so avoid.
Yes, but we will stick clear of going too far into anything that could be spoilery. Let's just go down the list sort of on IMDb of some of the main cast. So we got Finn Wolfhard as Trevor. So he's kind of like the older kid, obviously the guy from Stranger Things. So, yes. And it's kind of like Stranger Things feels like a cousin of this movie in a lot of ways. So he plays like one of the main kids in the story. He's like the older kid, and he's kind of more interested in girls and cars and that sort of thing. But yeah, he's an excellent character.
Yeah. Well, he's hardly kind of in it, if I'm honest. But we'll talk about that why later. He is your typical teenager though, isn't he? Yeah. Sort of like trying to be cool, cocky older brother sort of thing. Yeah. I love the bit where the mum's taking them to school and he's like, pull over, don't want to be seen with you sort of thing. Sure. That made me laugh. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of think he was there to really sort of attract the Stranger Things crowd, if I'm honest. Maybe.
Then we got McKenna Grace as Phoebe.
Yes.
So I'm really impressed with McKenna Grace. Like she's 15, she's got 59 listings for actoring. For actorizing. On
that is
IMDb.
Mind-blowing. That really
Crazy.
is, isn't it?
Yeah, nuts. And I recognise her as young Sabrina and young Carol Danvers, and she was also in Handmaid's Tale, which is interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's nuts. But yeah, she's probably the standout character in this movie.
Oh, for sure. She was completely the MVP and my favourite, I think.
Probably designed as the main character, yes. But she definitely stands out regardless. So she's like one of the main kids as well. And she's kind of the more different kid, you know, more interested in sort of science and everything. Yeah. Which makes sense given the story.
I didn't like that they really leaned into the stereotypical, oh, she's nerdy, she likes science, so she must have glasses and curly hair. I'm like, wow, thank you very much.
I don't know, I'm okay with that. It felt old school,
True, yeah. But I mean, like the whole, I'm not very good socially with people, but I did caveat
generally
that
true,
with...
though, isn't
it? Maybe. I very much loved her dad jokes. They were fantastic.
They were great, yeah. There were some really good funnies in this movie. Yes. She had a lot of jokes, and the next guy, Logan Kim, as podcast, he was really funny as well. Like, kept narrating like the story really as it was happening.
Is this her death?
Yeah. It was like some of it was like exposition, but done in a really clever and funny way. So I thought it was really good. Yeah. So he's called Podcast because he has a podcast, of course.
Of course.
Obviously, we have a podcast, And I feel like they could have done this in such a way that it felt like a dig at people for doing podcasts and things.
Great.
But yeah, it was great. They kept it fun and respectful. And...
I find it funny though, because obviously there's been Only Murders in the Building that has done the whole podcast thing, and they obviously take the mick. They've got phones and they're like, oh, this is like studio quality recording, and you're like, no, it's not. But yeah, the whole fact that he keeps going on about how he'll get good after he really comes into his own after episode 46.
Yeah.
And he's got one subscriber.
Sure. Like us.
Yeah.
So it feels apt. Yeah. I like that they did, because like a podcaster, what is a podcaster if not a fan of something, And so it was kind of a clever way of bringing the fans into it as well.
It's funny though, 'cause she's like, so what's your podcast about? And then he's like, science, supernatural, mysteries, and then he's like, sometimes a restaurant review.
Yeah. It's true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just chuck everything in there. Yes. So again, another one of the main kids in the story.
Yes. I think they had really fantastic chemistry though, didn't they? It was like the whole outsiders / misfits coming together to save the day. And
so each one has a sort of archetype, like you were kind of alluding to earlier.
Yes.
So he's like more of the comedy relief, I guess, archetype.
But I think McKenna Grace really proved the heart of the film, actually.
Yeah.
And she was really fearless and very clever. Cleverer than Paul Rudd's character.
Indeed. So then we had Celeste O'Connor, kind of like the last of the main kids, as Lucky. Did I say that? Lucky? So she's like the oldest one, and she kind of plays the love interest of one of the other characters. But other than that, she's not really
not very fleshed out, really, is she?
So yeah, it would have been nice to see her have more of a role, I think, but that's cool. Then of course we have some of the adult characters like Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon. Paul Rudd, though. Like...
Mr. Gruberson.
Yeah, he's perfect. He's great in this.
He was so sort of goofy, laid-back teacher, playing wildly inappropriate horror videos, wheeling out the VHS for anyone who remembers that.
What was the first one? It was like a killer dog or something.
Like, he said something like Beethoven that went rabid and was trying to eat things. It was just really funny.
And it's so true as well. Like, I remember in school, when a teacher hadn't prepared a lesson, they would just put a video on or something. It's funny. Carrie Coon was Callie, so she's the mother.
But is she the mother, really? It was more Phoebe as the mother.
She played a sort of disillusioned character, didn't she? Like, she played it great. I thought it was great. Yeah, that covers the main ensemble, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we can probably leave it there. I don't think we need to go into any others. Let's go into story then. Plot/story. Okay. So it's set in 2021, but with a very strong 80s vibe, and which I love. But they do this by setting it in a small kind of backwoods town in sort of Oklahoma. Yes.
I mean, there's very... it seems very disconnected to the sort of current world, doesn't it? I mean, 'cause they've got like the drive-in diner, they've got the old school cinemas. Yeah.
Where they have... roller skates.
Yes.
I don't know why I did that. I was like trying to remember what. Yeah.
It's like its own bubble, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's really clever how they kind of linked it to old school while being in a modern world. That's good. So I would say it starts with really strongly. We jump straight into like a chase scene, don't we? And like the shots and everything feels very, the way they flow, it feels very 80s movie, which I really love as well. Yeah. Sort of has that kind of action, adventure, horror, 80s movie vibe, which is cool. And it just sets up the movie perfectly, I think. And you kind of know straight off the bat what the movie's kind of going to be, which is cool. Gets you pumped.
For sure, yeah.
From the start, which is good. Yeah.
It's a little bit creepy too, isn't it? There's little undertones of kind of horror elements there too, which I appreciated.
Horror elephants? Horror elements in there.
There were not horror elephants, I'm sorry to say.
We'll just spoil that right now. Cool. And then we meet our main family. So that's single mum we mentioned before and her 2 kids. And we follow their journey as they head to this small town and watch the story unfold from there. Don't want to go too much into what happens.
They sort of discover the mystery of their grandparent, don't they? Yeah. And by finding out secret things in the house, and obviously the proton packs come into play, and the iconic car, and
yes, it definitely leans very strongly into nostalgia, but it definitely isn't a carbon copy either of the first movie.
I know that was one of your main issues with the later Star Wars.
Yeah, Force Awakens just felt like a
Yes.
carbon copy of Star Wars to me.
Whereas this is more, it's obviously got elements of it, and it's obviously very affectionate nods to it.
Yes.
But there's enough new stuff to sort of launch a whole new saga, I would think.
I would agree. Yeah. Feels fresh.
Yeah. So it's quite like goofy misfit comedy, isn't it, with horror elements that feel a bit sort of Goosebumps-esque. So as you said, there's plenty of Easter eggs and wider nods. There's a nice Baskins and Robbins one that you might spot to keep fans happy. Whereas there are some nice little moments that aren't too scary, but I did enjoy them.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, when you're making a movie like this, because you want to appease the fans, so you want to make it nostalgia filled, but then there's a risk it can feel stale, like it's just doing the same thing. The other risk is you try to make it too original, and then the fans will hate it because it's not referencing the originals enough.
Sort of stuck between
So then you kind of have to do this really difficult balancing act. But I feel like this movie does it well. I don't think everyone will agree. I think everyone's going to have that line, aren't they? And,
yes, for sure.
And some people will think it went more in one direction or the other than they would hope. Anyway, yes, let's move on to sort of visuals, soundtrack and score and stuff.
Okie dokie.
So there is a score in there.
Yes.
I always miss the score. I don't know why. But yeah, it's kind of got, you kind of mentioned it has sort of horror style.
Lots of that, and then lots of sort of loud jump noises.
That's true.
Yeah.
There are a couple of jump scares, I think.
Yes. So the score is by Rob Simonson. He's done quite a lot of stuff actually. Nothing that Stargirl I think is the latest one that he's worked on.
Okay.
But yes, definitely sort of the goosebumpy music, horror vibes. That you can tell it's just there's something sort of lurking there.
Yeah,
it does the whole
sort of building suspense and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly.
We have the soundtrack, which the main theme obviously makes a return.
Thankfully.
There's some other great tracks in there too, I feel. Yeah. It's like old school, but also new stuff as well.
Yeah, McKenna Grace actually performs a song, I believe, on the
That's cool.
end credits. Mm-hmm.
So, visuals.
Okay.
Yeah, so as we talked about, it's kind of like this modern times, but in an old school setting, which kind of really helps set the scene. We already mentioned about the diner and everything, but that really adds something, I think. But yeah, the photography, cinematography, color grading, all excellent. And then they have a really good mix of sort of practical, prosthetic, and CGI. And the CGI isn't too crazy. It doesn't go overboard or anything, which is important to me.
It feels fitting, I would say, yeah.
So, and then we got monster design, which is there's a lot of stuff from originals.
There is a new monster, I believe.
Yeah, very much based.
Yeah, it's very much in the vein of.
Yeah, works really well.
Yeah,
works really well.
For sure. I think the balance was very good with practical and visual effects, and sort of puppets. They very much seemed to hark back to the originals. I would say
something that I would mention, but I don't want to mention because it will be a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, there was some practical effects and stuff in there, which was good. Should we mention Stay Puft?
Yeah, they're in the trailer, right?
They're in the trailer.
Yeah.
So you got these mini Stay Puft things.
Oh, they're so cute.
And they really remind me of like Gremlins because they're really cute, but yet they're super mischievous and destructive, really.
Yes.
Dangerous.
Surprisingly, yes. Yeah. I really enjoyed obviously seeing the proton packs, the ghost traps. Yeah. There's like a little base that they have, which is quite sweet. It all feels very sort of homely and sort of worked upon, doesn't it? And
I like that they went a bit more into the proton packs. I felt that they actually kind of poked around inside them. We got a little bit of
explanation.
Some how it works and like the cyclotron and everything.
Yeah, and there's like a bit of a cool upgrade to the car as well.
Yeah.
And there's some really good chase scenes as well with the car, which I really enjoyed. And I'm just going to say the editing is really well done, I would say too.
Excellent, yeah.
It feels a bit Edgar Wright with the editing. It feels quite cutty, but well done. I would say quite choppy and quite fast edited.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Cool. So let's do it then. Verdict, rating. How would you rate this movie?
Wow. I think it's really fun, really full of charm, and like a really nice, affectionate nod to the originals. Is it enough of its own to warrant more? And I definitely think that's going to be a big old question when it comes out. But personally, I had such a blast with it. I would give it 4 out of 5 stars or 2 thumbs up. I do have to caveat that I am a little disappointed that there wasn't like a little nod to the 2016 version.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that version. I think it didn't have the same... I think that went too far in trying to do something a bit new.
Yeah.
And kind of lost that original vibe. But I enjoyed it as a fun movie. So it's good. For this one, I think if you love the originals and are looking for that nostalgia kick, if you enjoy 80s movies, vibes in general, and busting makes you feel good, then I think you'll have a great time with this movie. And it's definitely worth watch in my book. I would give it 2 thumbs up, and I'm excited to watch it again.
Cool. Yeah. So when's it out in general release, Chris?
So it's 18th, isn't it, of November in the UK. I think it might be 17th of November in the US. Yeah.